Good morning, student friends. Today we are going to a poem titled On Children. The poem is written by Khalil Gibran. Khalil Gibran is a Lebanese American poet who brings out his high philosophy of life in his simple and beautiful poetic essays. So, when it comes to the key dates, Khalil Gibran was born in Shari, a village in the north of Lebanon. He originated from a humble family. His father, Khalil, worked as a tax collector, and his mother, Kamila Rehma, had one son from a previous marriage. And he was born on 6th of January 1883 at Shari and took his last breath on April 10th, 1931 in New York. You could see the place, the birthplace of the poet Khalil Gibran. So this is what the map which you could see right now. And so the present poem which you have on children is extracted from his book titled The Prophet. The Prophet is a book of 26 prose poetry fables written in English by Lebanese American poet and writer Khalil Gibran. Prose poetry. So, what is that prose poetry? So, prose poetry is a hybrid genre that features the devices and figurative language of poetry incorporated into the structure of prose. It is partially poetic in nature, and prose in its style. So that is what we call it as prose poetry, a hybrid of both the things. While the finished product has an appearance of prose and it reads like a poetry ultimately. So what you could see as. So the poetic qualities are rhyme and rhythm, so which you cannot find here. So that's why it is in a prosaic way, in a prose manner. It was originally published in the year 1923 by Alfred A. Knopf. It is Khalil's best known work which has been ever recorded. And coming to the book, so what it talks about, the prophet is an imaginary character which you could see titled Al Mustafa, had lived in the city of Ophelis, and Ophelis is again a fictional land, an imaginary land, and he lived there for 12 years and he is about to board a ship which will carry him home. At that time, he is stopped by a group of people with whom he discusses various topics related to life and human condition. And the whole book, The Prophet, is divided into chapters dealing with various topics, as I told, namely love, marriage, children, giving, eating and drinking, work, joy, sorrow, houses, clothes, buying and selling, crime and punishment, law, freedom, reason and passion, pain, self knowledge, teaching, friendship, talking, time, good and evil, prayer, pleasure, beauty, religion, and death. So these are the various topics on which the imaginary character Al Mustafa, the prophet, is made to speak in this book. And on children, the present poem which you have is a critique of the usual expectations of parents about their children. So normally that is what I think the parents expect. my child to be like that, this and all. So that is what I think. So they have, each parent have their own expectations, and that is being criticized in this poem titled On Children. Through this poem, he offers to guide parents on the essence of parenting with love, much against the mundane expectations. So, what it should be, how you have to bring out their, your own children, is what he has beautifully brought out in this poem. And ultimately, what he wants to say through that is, parents may give their children love, and they should never force their ideas on children, is the core theme what you could notice on this poem. When it comes to the context, in this poem, the opening lines, a mother approaches the prophet to know about his perspectives on children. So at that time, the poet, through the character Al-Mustafa, speaks. He captures the attention in his shocking declaration. So what it is, your children are not your children. So what it is then? So let us look into that each line. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. So what he wants to say through that? So humans are the product of these natural forces at play. Parents take credit for giving birth to children, but their parents are not only a medium through life expresses itself. That's what he could say. So what he wants to say is that parents are just a medium through which life expresses itself. So they are like a vehicle in another way. Whenever the environment is conducive for growth, very congenial for growth, very helpful for growth, life takes birth again and again and again and again, so on and so forth. This is what he wants to say. We see this in animal kingdom, often forgetting we are the part of this same animal kingdom and nature. So this is what I think. So he beautifully says, your children are not your children, they are the sons and daughters. That means the children, the another way, gender he points out, of life's longing for itself, for the life itself, and not for you. That's what. Then, so they come through you, not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. So this is so philosophical and beautiful. So what he says, so look at the very prepositions what he used, through you and not from you. So he says that, so Khalil's words are about the possessiveness parents often exhibit regarding the children. That is what I think is my child and he has to listen to me and all these kind of things. No parents will have that attitude. And he says that, so parents are a vehicle through which the children are born. So they are come through you and you are not the creator, but children are not possession of their parents. You are not the creator there. You should not possess, you should not own, you should not have control on them. So each of us is holding our children in trust for the future. That's what so he says. So we need to care for our children till they become independent, just as our parents did for us. So then we should not let them free. It's not like that. We should care them. Caring is different from possessing. Possessing means acquiring them, owning them in all aspects. But caring means taking care of them, their wishes, fulfilling their wishes, and helping them to achieve their goal and all these things, and making them to think independently and make a decision. So this is what you could see there. So then you may give them your love but not your thoughts. So this is what I think. So you can give your love, you can give your affection, You can give your care, but you should not put your thoughts so far. Why he wants to say, the reason for that far means, why he wants to say they have their own thoughts, they are the individual entity in this world. So what we could remember in this line is, so as Tagore's words, the one who plants trees knowing that he will never sit under its shade. So he has at least started to understand the meaning of life. The one who plants a tree knowing that no, he is not going to get benefit from that, so still he plants it. So he is the person who has understood the meaning of life. And the same thing here, that's what a thing. So as a child, so to your your sons and daughters, so as a parent, so to their children, your children, so you can give your love and affection, but not your ideas, your thoughts and all, because they have their own thoughts. They are the individual entity, so they are individual, separate in all aspects. The only give that we can give to our children is what I could say, a gift of love. So then children fondly remember the unconditional love they received from the parents. We need to prepare children for life. So preparation is not just filling impressionable minds in their own thoughts and expressed desires, our own impressions in their minds, what he wants to say. And the best preparation for life is to give them, to show that how to think for themselves. That's very important. So thinking, the process of thinking, how we have to think in a right way. So we have to show them the best way of thinking, the process of thinking. So then let them start thinking. So we should not keep our thoughts in their minds. So we should make them to think in a proper way. So parents' role is in this aspect is just to guide them through this long journey of life. So again he takes up the next line in a beautiful way. You may house their bodies, not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, nor even in your dreams. So what he says is that you may house their bodies. So parents need to take care of the basic needs of their children. So their bodies are the places where their souls dwell in. So you may give their body a place. You can tie them. You can make them sit. But is it possible to make their souls sit? No. You can have control on the body, the physical entity, but the non-physical entity, their thoughts, their process, their ideas, the wandering soul, you cannot. So each of our previous generations lived in a different environment than the one we live. So what we need to do then, the same is going to be with our children also. Their world will be different from ours. Be confident that our children are equipped to deal with the future they live in, just like we were equipped for the world we live in. So also how we were brought up by our own parents, in the same way the next generation, our children, would also be. So we need to be confident on that aspect, and we need to trust them in that aspect. Each generation's role is to leave the world in a better than the one they inherited. The ultimate goal of life of in this human beings is to keep the world in a better way for the next generation. Apart from love, that is the biggest gift what we can give to our children. Then what he says, you may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. So you stands for the parents, and them they stands for children. So you may strive to be like them. So children always live in the present with any regrets about the past, no regrets. So what you could see is that you may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. So you may strive to make like them. So that is what you can see, that to let them, you may strive for what is to be done, what is not to be done, and all this striving for to like them, but seek not to make them like you. But don't teach them, don't expect it that they should like you, mean what you wanted to do, what you or wish is, that should not be done by them. So this is what he wants to say: for life goes not backward nor tarries with yesterday. That's what I think. Why you should not expect what your desires are to be? So because life is a progression, so it doesn't go back, it keeps on moving in the front row. So for that, so they have their own desires, it is their life which they are going to lead in the days to come. And so most of the time, so you will not probably there, so you're not probably there when they are facing this world, because changes is the law of nature and it keeps on changing. And for that changing world, they need to be prepared themselves to face that world. So because what the world you are facing now, so will not be the same world in the days to come. So they have to face it in a different way. So they should go on with all that kind of thing. So grown-ups need to learn this attitude from the children. So what is that attitude? So they always live in the present without worrying of the past and without worrying of the future. So that is what, because that's what he says, that for life goes not backward nor tarries with yesterday. So don't worry about the past, don't think of the world's future, and act in the present. That is what he wants to say. And here we could remember to these lines Kierkegaard's words: life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards, what he says. So if you want to understand a life, just peep into the past, study that what it is, and you will come to know why we are like this. And but so should we live in the past? No, because if we live in the past, it doesn't fetch you any result. It is a waste of life. So what we have to, only to study life, we have to go into the past and come back and move forward for the betterment of life. So most of us will understand the meaning of life very late in life, if at all. So this is what I think. So then there is a lot of regression. For that, to avoid such regressions, we should understand life in the back and then come back and start moving to the future. The best we can do is live our life the best way we can in the present situation, rather than dwelling in the past or hallucinating and just imagining and daydreaming in the future. The only thing available for us to live in this world is the eternal now. It is what we could see, that so which keeps life going forward for the path of progression. And you are the bows, and from which your children as living arrows sent forth. This is a beautiful metaphoric expression which he says. So what you could say is that he gives a beautiful comparison, beautiful analogy, by calling parents as the bows and children as the arrows. So, and the string to the bow will be a situation, what you could see that. So, and what happens, the bow is stagnant and the arrow is moving. So that is why he calls it as a living arrow. And if we want to leave the arrow to move further, so what you have to do, you have to stretch the bow. The moment you stretch the bow, it bends, and then after that more it bends, faster the arrow goes to a far off place. So this physical law is beautifully fitted into the mental law, and parents' role here is to be a bow that powers the arrow, that is the children, and for what purpose? A journey towards the future where they live in. So that is why he says that children are the bow's own creation. Sorry, children are the bow's arrow, and it is the bow that should stretch and give power to the arrow to live further and lead a happy life. The more the bow is flexible, the more it bends, and the more it bends, the more it goes further. The stringer, the bow string, the more it can be stretched and more power that can pass to the arrow. The steadier the aim, the more accurately the arrow will fly on its journey towards a different space and time. So then what happens? And then there should be some power that stretches, and that power is archer, the person. So what he calls, now the archer who stretches the bow with his power, and that archer is none other than God. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might that his arrows may go swift and far. So what you could notice here is that Gibran calls God as the archer, and his role is to send forth the arrow towards an infinite future by using the bows. He stretches the bow and the bow bends, and more the bow bends, more he stretches, better the arrow that goes further. So we have reached here today standing in the achievement of past generations. So what we should always should not forget about it. What we are present is because of our past. And so what we are today will decide our future. So this is how life is. This cycle of life continues for untold generations in the future. So there is no end to it. That is why he says infinite. So we need to perform our assigned roles in the time we have. So what we have, what is that time we are in? Let us do our best for the betterment. And then finally what he concludes with all these things: let your bending in the archer hand be for gladness. So here your stands again for the parents. Let your bending, so as a bow, your bending in the hands of archer, that is in the hands of God, be for gladness, for happy. So let happily you bend, because more you bend in the hands of the archer, in the hands of God, in the situations, farther your arrow, that is your children, go and lead a happy and contented life. For even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he also loves the bow that is stable. Note the use of H capital, so which stands for the Almighty God. So what you could notice here is the children as arrows that goes into the future to become bows for their own children, and so on, for the cycle of life continues. Today they are the arrows, and they go from the bow. Your as you as a bow. So from your bow, so this arrow that goes, and when it goes further in the days in the future, that arrow becomes a bow for another arrow, that means to their children. And this is how the cycle of life keeps continuing forever and ever. Our effort in this present should be driven by unselfish love, kindness, and humbly accepting the part we play in this journey of life. This is what he says. So he loves both the arrow as well as the bow. And to sum up the entire poem, what we could notice is that children have their own identity. They are the examples of continuity. So what you could see that they are the continuity of generation. They have their own identity, so you should not stress on the part of it. And then what is a parent role? Parents are just a source, so they are not a creator, and they cannot control child's thoughts. They can control their body but not their thoughts, and they must guide their children in a proper way. So what is that guiding? How to think. So you should not indoctrinate, you should not inculcate, you should not sow your thoughts seeds, but you should teach them, you should guide them how to think in a proper way. So this is what you could notice. When we just get into the deeper analysis of this poem, the seeds of the prophet's counsel may be found in stories of Khalil Gibran's childhood in Lebanon. And Gibran was a free-spirited boy with artistic aspirations and a passion for storms. In the midst of a torrent, he would strip off his clothes and run out into the rain. So this is how he enjoyed his childhood days. While his father disapproved of his son's unconventional nature and artistic skills, his mother safeguarded him and nurtured him in all a part of his love. Consistent with the advice Al Mustafa gives to Ophali's parents, Gibran's mother gave her son her love but not her thoughts, and she never tried to make him like herself. That is what you could see. That's what Khalil has learned. So that made him to say to the whole world what a parenting is. And Gibran, speaking through Al Mustafa, envisions childhood and parenthood as spiritual journeys in which both child and parent have a transcendent task of determined by God. That is what I think. It is what I could say is that child, as he says, a beautiful comparison, is an arrow which is aimed at the future, and a parent is like a bow which must be sturdy, strong, and stable. So both are in the hands of God. So, and who is that? He is a divine archer. From this childhood, so Gibran understood the value of stability in the home. So if the home is stable, so arrow can go further. His father was a poor provider. He drank to excess and eventually landed in jail, leaving his family in poverty. Gibran was about 8 at that time, 8 years, and a few years later, So, to escape their hopeless situation, Gibran's mother uprooted her four children from Lebanon and moved to America. Because of her resourcefulness and tireless efforts, the family survived. So, and the survival of a family is because of the hard effort by her mother, and she was a constant source of love, strength, and stability and hope, and provided Gibran with opportunities to develop his innate gifts. So these qualities are mirrored in the Al Mustafa's vision of ideal parent as the bow able to send the arrow, the child flying swift far away into the future. So this is all what you could notice in this poem, and so we will look into the back exercises in the next class. Thank you.